In 1918, the conclusion of the Jukichi Harada v. the People of California case broke the barrier of the Alien Land Law of 1913 for immigrants by being the first court case to challenge it and win, affirming the right of immigrants' children to own land, regardless of race, and initiating the eventual appeal of the unjust law. Additionally, the house they won the right to live in, now known as the Harada House, became a national landmark commemorating the lasting legacy of the Harada family's contributions to the Japanese immigrant community. These immigrants made up more than half of the agricultural laborers in the state, but were denied the right to own land. The number of Japanese immigrants spiked in 1900, causing the people of America to form political groups against the Japanese, trying to restrict Japanese to their own school and neighborhood because of their resentment of the Japanese. Japanese were being employed for labor jobs, and people believed they were taking the jobs that were not theirs to have. This led to multiple attempts of anti-Japanese bills. These were rejected, but eventually led to the creation of laws that prevented foreigners from owning land. Many states either implemented these laws or had other restrictions against non-American citizens owning property. The specific wording of aliens ineligible for citizenship eventually became the norm for states to use in their laws because it didn't target a group racially. But in response to the anti-Japanese hysteria, the land laws began to target Japanese immigrants when California passed the Alien Land Law of 1913. This law forbade people who were not able to become citizens from owning land and possessing long-term leases. Another ordinance prohibited American citizenship for people of Japanese descent, making it impossible for them to own property. The purpose was to prevent Japanese immigration, but the Japanese children who were born in the United States were not affected because they were legally U.S. citizens. One family who overcame their struggles and broke the barrier of the law was the Harada family. Jukichi Harada was studying to be a teacher, but ended up joining the U.S. Navy and moved from Japan to America in 1900. 3 years later, his wife Ken and his son Masaatsu immigrated to the U.S. from Japan and finally reunited with Jukichi in 1905. They then leased a rooming house in Riverside and worked at the Golden State Restaurant. Eventually, they had more children. However, when his son Tadao died of diphtheria around the age of 5 because of the bad living conditions in the rooming house, he decided it was time to move out. Wanting a safe, healthy environment for his children, Jukichi Harada eventually bought a house on Lemon Street, a street in a predominantly white neighborhood of California. Knowing he was not able to own property, being a first-generation Japanese immigrant, Jukichi brought the house under his children's names, for they were born in America and therefore were U.S. citizens.
There are multiple barriers that my grandparents faced. The inability to have title to real estate was one. This limited finding properties and then having to undergo a circuitous route to purchase that property.
First, they attempted to buy him out, offering him $500 more than what he paid to get him to sell his house. Harada, saying money was no object compared to his children, refused the offer. Meanwhile, the owner of the house, F.C. Noble, prophetically sent a letter to U.S. Siegel Webb, asking, "Can a Jap, boy or girl, born in California acquire and hold real estate?" The response was positive, meaning neither Jukichi Harada nor F.C. Noble could have predicted the court case that would ensue. After Harada refused to leave, his neighbors created a committee for the sole purpose of kicking their new neighbors out. They hired Miguel Estudillo as the lawyer for the plaintiff. Meanwhile, Harada was preparing his case as the respondent. W.A. Purrington and Adair, well-respected attorneys in Riverside, offered to head the case. The case was filed under the name of the People of California v. Jukichi Harada in October of 1916. It was the very first case to test the 1913 California Alien Land Law, garnering local, national, and even international attention. This was, in part, due to the relationship between Japan and US after they entered the Gentleman's Agreement. They stated that if Japan stopped issuing passports to Japanese laborers trying to enter the US for a job, then the US would not restrict any other Japanese immigrants. Due to the anti-Japanese movements and laws in California, the two countries thought this agreement was necessary to reduce tensions. This agreement was later turned into a treaty, and because of this treaty, and Japan being an American ally during World War I, the Japanese embassy in Washington, D.C. paid close attention to the trial, believing that it shouldn't be ignored by the Japanese government. The situation was dire. If the plaintiff won the case, the Haradas lost their house to the state. The plaintiff's case was based upon the fact that Yukichi Harada had bought a house, but since he was an alien, this was illegal under the 1913 alien law. They also claimed that he had bought the house with interest in the property, which was also illegal. Their case reinforced the racist viewpoints that permeated the law and legislation at the time. During the trial, Puritan claimed that the United States Supreme Court has held that any Chinese child that was American-born has the same rights as any other American citizen. Therefore, it should apply to all the Japanese children that are American-born as well. Estudio then responded, saying that if this statement was true, there was nothing to prevent the state of California from becoming Japanized. With many hearings, continuances, and postponements, the trial eventually ended on September 14, 1918, in favor of the Haradas, when Judge Craig confirmed that the Alien Land Law of 1913 did not apply to children who were American citizens, saying they were entitled to the same rights as any other American citizen under the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This ensured that children of immigrants who were born in the United States, even if they are of a different ethnicity and culture, had the right to own property, applying to both Japanese and the various other immigrants in the U.S. It also invalidated the idea that Japanese immigrants shouldn't be allowed to live among white people, undermining systematic racism. A while after the Haradas won the court case for the house, other court cases had been made against the law, since they felt their rights had been violated. Because of the Harada case, other Japanese immigrants realized that they could buy houses under the names of their children legally. This loophole was the only way for Japanese to openly defy the property discrimination against them. This helped them to break the barrier to house ownership. Part of the law was overturned in 1920, and 32 years later, the entire Alien Land Law was overturned in 1952, and this stopped the discrimination against the Japanese people who were not American citizens from purchasing houses. Unfortunately, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the government sent all the Japanese and Japanese Americans to internment camps, including the Harada family, for being suspected spies for Japan. During this time, Jukichi and Ken Harada were in their 60s and their health was deteriorating. They got sent to Topaz Relocation Center in Utah, where they died behind a barbed wire fence, away from the rest of their children. After everyone was released from these camps, the rest of the children separated and moved all over the country. Sumi Harada, the youngest daughter, was the only child to return. She transformed their house to give Japanese internment families a place to stay and start a new beginning after the government confiscated their properties. The Harada House stands today as a national landmark commemorating the case and how it broke barriers for the Japanese. In 1977, the Harada House was nominated as a city landmark and had eventually a national historic landmark in 1990, when Sumi Harada received a letter from the chief historian of the National Park Service saying, "The house has been found to possess national significance in the history of the United States." The story of the Haradas is now used for academic research and school curriculum materials. The Harada House stands as a lasting landmark, officially recognized nationally to the broken barrier it symbolizes. The children of Jukichi Harada were able to continue living in this house through their father, Jukichi Harada's brave actions to retain the house through the people of the Save California v. Jukichi Harada. This case broke the previously unchallenged state of the law and set the precedent for further challenges to the law and the eventual repeal of the Alien Land Law Act, breaking barriers for future immigrants. The Harada House continues to be celebrated as a representation of the Harada's honorable actions and the fight for the rights of Japanese immigrants.